Well, we all know he's talking bunkum. As I put to Shadow Treasurer Ted O'Brien, it's government spending that's propping up the economy.
Chris, that's right. When you have government spending growing at a faster rate than the economy, you have a big problem. And that's exactly what's been going on. And so the government just continues to pour money into the economy. And when it does, it competes with households and businesses for goods and services, which just drives prices up further, which is why inflation now is at 3.8%. And the Reserve Bank really has no choice but to keep rates on hold, or possibly, as some market commentators are saying, next year we might see a rate increase.
Apart from reducing its own spending, making way for the private economy, what could the government do to try and get some more life to encourage private sector development, growth, jobs?
Chris, I think it can do a few things. Number one, it can look at reducing regulations. It did introduce 5,000 pieces of new regulation in its first term of government, and it's continuing in this term. Number two, it has to solve for energy. We do know energy costs have gone up by 40%. We're at record levels of insolvencies. Manufacturers are closing their doors or being offshored, or taxpayers are having to subsidise their existence. They've got to look at tax. They've got to look at workplace relations. There's a whole range of economic areas that they can fix, all of which will encourage investment, will make it Australia more competitive, will allow the small business owners and allow the larger companies to get out there and invest and employ. This is the sort of economy we should have, but that requires the government to get out of the way. And Labor's approach is to put the government at the centre. And that is why we have seen this big government spending agenda, and it only continues.
Where does immigration fit into this picture? Because we've got sluggish growth, obviously, and a large part of that growth is actually funded by this massive government spending. Is immigration also propping up that growth? And if you were to cut back immigration, would there be an economic penalty?
I believe that indeed immigration has been propping up the economic growth. I don't think there's much doubt about that. The Labor government has basically shifted the economy into the slow lane, and then it's gotten, over a 2-year period, 1 million people into Australia to push the car to go a little bit faster. That's sort of the way they're running things. There's no doubt that the immigration levels have been too high and they need to come down. But I think this government is just addicted to find any ways to try to boost the economic growth or taxpayers, instead of getting back to the basics. And the basics are to get the settings right that encourage the private sector, that encourage businesses to invest, to employ and whatnot. Of course, skilled immigration in particular remains vitally important, but that's a different thing from just saying we just need more and more people to come in to cover the fact that the economy otherwise isn't growing. That's what Labor's doing.
Well, if immigration helps to grow the GDP overall, of course it doesn't help when it comes to GDP per capita. And while we've had a lot of quarters with GDP per capita going backwards, a per capita or a household recession, these latest figures have that flat, GDP per capita flat. That just underscores that families, households, the cost of living, people are still doing it tough.
They're still doing it tough, all right, and with Christmas just around the corner, I've certainly met even constituents of mine who are just, they're working out. Do they buy those additional presents they were hoping to for the kids? I've met a family which has totally cancelled their Christmas holiday because they just can't afford it. I spoke to a parent today who's having to move their children to a different school, again, just because they can't make it work. And so real lives are being affected because the cost of living is just not being tackled. Because again, Labor is not taking the steps necessary across those key levers. Instead, its only solution is to tax Australians more and then to give them some back through some sort of subsidy. That's their business model.
Now, you mentioned energy, and I agree with you, energy is a huge factor. Energy prices are hurting families, hurting small businesses, pushing up the cost of everything. They're demanding subsidies from government to keep refineries and smelters going and the like. So it's a massive handbrake on the economy. And I just want to get your thoughts on what we saw from the ABC just 48 hours ago. The 7:30 host, Sarah Ferguson, put up a fact check. She was fact checking Susan Lee, effectively fact checking the coalition, and saying that it is wrong to say that the push to renewables is increasing electricity prices. The ABC said, yes, prices are going up, but they're not being increased by the push to renewables. Your response to that?
Chris, while I didn't see that post, Labor's renewables only plan is driving up the cost of energy. People know that. They experience it because they get their bill at home. And what usually I find the Labor Party never talk about is the cost of the network charges. So the more you put large industrial scale renewable projects scattered around the country, you have to build out transmission lines. Now, those network charges which hit your bill at home, that's over 50% of your bill now. And that is only going to increase. The more you rely, well over 90% on renewables for your energy solution, well, the more of these things you have to build. And that all hits your bill at home. I mean, you know, companies that build these things, they're not charities. They don't do it for free. They expect a return. Indeed, it's a regulated rate of return.
Exactly.
So there's no way that prices are going to go backwards.
Yeah, well, we talk about this a lot, and I've spoken to an expert again about it tonight, an independent expert. But how do you deal with having a sensible national debate on this crucial policy issue when you've got $1 billion taxpayer-funded broadcasting behemoth pumping out information that is absolutely categorically the opposite from reality?
Well, Chris, I think the thing that we've had to do, and we'll just continue doing, is going back to the facts. Making international comparisons I find very insightful. Australians know that something is wrong. Even if Australians don't follow the energy market, that's fair enough. At the end of the day, they know it's broken because they are paying for something that is broken. But when you look across the rest of the world, that's not the case everywhere. Indeed, those countries that have a balanced energy mix, that aren't sort of prematurely closing those coal plants, that are building out renewables in a sensible way, that are trying to pour more gas into the market, and they have nuclear energy, they have affordable energy. And that's what Australia needs. And we've just got to keep pressing it and not let go. And anyone who's out there saying otherwise, well, we've just got to call that out and continue to prosecute the case.
Thanks for joining us, Ted. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.